Deep breaths, she tells herself, because she's so excited and needs to calm down. Welcome to the SumerSports Show. Massive trade took place today. We have lots to discuss, all of the many layers of it. Lindsay Rhodes with Sam Bruchhaus. Myles Garrett is headed to Los Angeles. Jared Verse is headed to Cleveland. There are so many layers to this. I think my headline here, Sam, is that I think this is a win-win for both teams. And I think we're going to spend a lot of time here on today's show kind of breaking down why.
Yeah, it's like truly one of the most fascinating decisions. And I think that the coolest part is it's coming from two general managers who have slightly differing philosophies, but that we both, I think everyone agrees, have done an excellent job of running their franchise, whether that has led to a bunch of wins or whether that has led to a bunch of, like on paper wins from a certain perspective in terms of Andrew Berry. And so it's one of the most interesting trades I think we've seen in a very long time, including, I think, even the Micah Parsons trade, because this feels like a strategic move from both teams.
Both.
And in a way that I think the Micah Parsons trade really didn't. And also, we're starting to get a pretty robust market for a top 1 or top 2 defensive player of the year, or really potential, like if a quarterback really sucks, MVP candidate type players now that I don't think was even remotely clear 3 to 4 years ago. And so there's so many different elements to this move that it really, really presents a lot of questions for us to look into.
Yeah. I love stuff like this because it's so layered. I have been saying since last off season that I thought that Cleveland should trade Myles Garrett. Went on Cleveland radio and said that. I was hugely unpopular in Cleveland for a while after that. Don't think I won't be going through my old tweets later tonight when I have time and enjoying a petty fest, retweeting some of those comments. But in the short term, I think that this is actually like the absolute best case scenario. Understanding that obviously, since this is something I've been talking about for a year, that I thought that this was a smart path for Cleveland to entertain the concept of moving on from Myles Garrett, which is something that we need to talk about why. But this is the best case scenario, in my opinion. I mean, unless they got like another one, which I understand some Browns fans are going to be like, we should have received more ones for this. The compensation, as we know it right now, is that Cleveland gets Jared Verse, a first next year, a second the year after that, and a third the year after that. I think that this is in a lot of ways strategically for them, best case scenario, because Verse will very adequately, in ways that we'll describe here, fill the gap that taking Myles Garrett off the field leaves behind. Not to the degree, like we're not doing a 1-to-1 here, but like if you can find a young player to just plug right in there that is going to be really good, Jared Verse is a great option to build around, young, inexpensive, but then you also get more draft capital to go get a quarterback. Like that is the brass tacks of all of this. Is that if you don't have a quarterback, we say this over and over and over again, Sam, if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a chance. And this provides a path for them to go get a franchise quarterback in next year's draft. Just collect that capital and go get it. And I know that Browns fans will be like, yeah, but they've had that opportunity in the past and they blew that opportunity. But we can't do anything about that. All we can do is put together a process for us to go get that guy in the future. That's the only way that things are fixed there in Cleveland. Myles Garrett's incredible, but you hold on to Myles Garrett and you don't leverage the asset that you have that can get you this kind of draft capital to rebuild your roster, and you'll have the best defensive player in the league while also winning 5 games a year, which is what we saw last year. Like you have to do something to shake it up. And I think that this was really a best case scenario for them in terms of what they were able to get for that.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of elements that you hit on that made this particular deal happen. The first, which would have made any deal happen, is the stability of Myles Garrett being more valuable to the Rams than it is to the Browns. It's quite simple there. He's a Defensive Player of the Year candidate every year, and the Browns haven't won a lot of games despite that. Pretty simple. That's a lot more valuable to the Rams, who are really, really good and have Jared Verse on their team. The second element is the difference in the contracts, right? So we already have Myles Garrett on a top tier long-term salary versus Jared Verse is just finished his second year. He's on a rookie deal and you get a year to extend him. So that difference in timeline made this happen. And then the final element, which is a little bit deeper and analytical, is that it's almost certain that Andrew Berry and team has a lower discount rate on those future picks than the Rams do. They're going to view that second round pick as functionally similar to a second round pick this year. And that is a very analytical approach to look at it. And so probably this looks like a massive win to the Rams on their chart. It looks like a massive win for the Browns on their chart. And all things considered, it kind of fills the needs of both philosophies very well.
I think one of the things I've noticed just in terms of comments that I've seen on Twitter, everyone knows Myles Garrett. Everybody understands all of the ways in which Myles Garrett is incredible and a game changer on defense, and he is a game changer on defense. I think he probably did lead to some wins for Cleveland, week 12 in particular against the Raiders. They were going to win that one. I mean, well, I don't know that they were going to win that one anyway. The Browns were the Browns, right? Like, they didn't get particularly good quarterback play in any of those wins at the end of the year that were attributed to Shedeur Sanders in conversation. Like, when we talk about quarterbacks, we talk about like, everybody won 3 games. You could make an argument that Myles Garrett was the difference in those games because the offensive EPA in those 3 wins at the end of the season with Shedeur, they ranked 24th, 29th, and 21st in each of those weeks on in terms of offensive EPA per play. Defensive EPA per play in those weeks, 3rd, 7th, and 14th. So I think you could make a strong argument, and particularly that game against the Raiders, Myles Garrett went nuts. All of our advanced stats are just like off the charts for that week for him. So you could make the argument that he did lead to a win or two, but again, you're still maxing at 5, right? Like, you need that quarterback play. You need that offensive production in order for it to be impactful. So to your point about him mattering more, and maybe even, and I would actually be interested to look at the Vegas lines and see if him coming to Los Angeles even does change their win total. Like, that would be fascinating to look at. It did already.
They're now the Super Bowl favorite.
Oh, I mean, I get that wise, but
yeah, there's 2 different elements to that. But I think it's a good starting point for what this move means for the Rams. Is that, are the books probably trying to capitalize on interest and intrigue? Yes. But it does indicate, and I agree with this analytically, that Myles Garrett is one of maybe 3 non-quarterbacks who can functionally move. And coaches, I'm separating coaches out from this, but Myles Garrett is one of the 3 non-quarterbacks who can actually move a line. And if I had to like really put that in terms of a figure, a conservative analytical figure, it'd be about 0.5 point. If he plays versus not plays. So what does that mean? Basically, every single game that we expect him to play, on average, let's say 14 or 15 games out of the 17, let's be conservative here. The Rams, who are a team who is really good, just got an extra 0.5 point. That's a massive, massive difference. That is bigger than on the Browns, where the Browns, you're probably already not going to be favored in a lot of these games. That 0.5 point just doesn't mean a lot if you're already not favored. So right. All things considered, this makes a ton of sense for the Rams. But I do want to push a little bit back, Lindsay, because I think we saw the ceiling of what that Rams team can be last year. And so what I think they're really investing in here is actually a floor raiser. I talk a lot about blending kind of my player experience and my analytical experience and saying that we can probably predict if a team will win 8 games. If you're a really good team, you should definitely win 8 games. I think that the Rams now have a team that is probably as much of a lock, injuries notwithstanding, to an 8-win team of all time. Now, what does it take to get to 12 and 13 wins? That's Matthew Stafford staying healthy. That's Puka Nacua staying healthy. Yeah. That's finding
Myles Garrett staying healthy too.
Myles Garrett staying healthy. That's finding the 13 personnel secret sauce that they found last year. That's your special teams being good, which is really what knocked them down from a Super Bowl candidate last year. So those elements are what is going to keep them from like the ceiling, which I think last year was the absolute ceiling of what we can see from that team. And basically they lost because of special teams. Like that's what it really came down to. That's why they're not the Super Bowl champion. But I think this is about as strong of a floor as you're ever going to see from a team now adding a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, or I mean, really a lock for a top 2 Defensive Player of the Year player to the Rams.
I want to get back to Cleveland in just a second because I do think that this is less clear for them and for Cleveland fans. Like, is this good for us? Is this bad for us? I think there's going to be more polarizing and volatile opinions about this move on that side. But because we're talking about the Rams, I want to follow up on what you just said. So the floor raiser versus the ceiling raiser, our buddy Asa has jumped into the chat and suggested this makes the Ty Simpson pick even weirder. What do you think about that in light of this move?
I actually think that this is a move for Ty Simpson more than it is for Matt Stafford, because let's consider kind of what we've learned, particularly on the SumerSports show with regards to the Matt Stafford situation. We had reporting on the SumerSports show from Jordan Roderick, who's probably the most plugged into this front office of anyone on earth, telling us that 2 years ago, there was some chagrin between Sean McVay, Les Snead, and Matt Stafford. And there was real thoughts that he was going to go to the Raiders or to another team. I think that's why they made the Ty Simpson move. And Mike Mayock on our draft show outlined clearly from an ex-general manager's perspective of how you have to address the quarterback position at all times. It has to be thought number one and action number one. Pretty much at all times is solidifying this. You're adding a 30-year-old Myles Garrett. The fact that a 33-year-old Myles Garrett is going to be wildly, wildly worse than a 30-year-old Myles Garrett is possible, but probably not that detrimental to your team. And he probably will continue to be at least a good pass rusher or a good inside rusher, regardless of how he ages. He also is immensely healthy. He's been quite healthy in his career. So what this feels like to me, even though it is certainly an all-in move for this season, is saying that we don't really know if Matt Stafford is going to be healthy this year. And we definitely don't even know if he's going to be on our team next year. And we have real questions about the third year. So we have to start building as if we have to have the number one defense in the league, no matter what, every year for the next 3 years. What is the best way to do that? To add an edge rusher, an immensely sticky position, and moreover, to add the best edge rusher. And maybe the best edge rusher we've seen in a very, 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 very long time, and probably a top 5 of all time. That's why I think this is almost kind of a Ty Simpson move, or at least a 2 timelines move, that we're going to risk this draft capital long-term because we actually think this is going to stabilize us in the future. Obviously, with the way that we've seen Les Snead draft, losing those draft picks does potentially harm a rookie quarterback. But if you're moving to a rookie quarterback, what are you notably not doing? Paying them a huge salary that could potentially go to Myles Garrett. So in my head, this is definitely a 2 timelines move. And I wonder if it isn't 75% trying to build a team that potentially Ty Simpson could win with, or a team for whoever comes in should Matt Stafford be hurt this year, as compared to Matt Stafford's going to win another MVP and we're going to have a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. I think it's more the first than the second.
We'll get back to the Rams in just a second, and we have Sean Syed standing by to join us to talk about some of the what this means for the 2 defensive schemes with these 2 guys going to flipping teams. But first, I want to discuss Jared Verse, because that was one of my primary thoughts in this, is that I feel like, and I started to get there and then I got sidetracked, that everybody knows Myles Garrett, and less people are familiar with how good Jared Verse is and has been for the Rams. So I think that that's a huge part of where I'm coming to the table from when I say I think this is a great move for the Cleveland Browns and maybe a best case scenario. Dan Bodine also likes this trade for the Browns. And I think we need to talk about what Jared Verse has done in his first 2 years in the league. And I think we can't articulate that enough. This is a young player who has come into the league, immediately had success. Yes, with a lot of great defensive pieces around him, for sure, in a great environment, but is also potentially ascending. Who knows where this is going? But we've seen really good pressure rate in particular out of him consistently. In fact, I tweeted out earlier today the pressure rate numbers from 2025 for Myles Garrett and Jared Verse, and didn't say which one was which. And his pressure rate, Jared Verse last year, was 15.5%. Myles's was 16.5. Average time to pressure for Jared Verse, 2.54 seconds. Myles Garrett, 2.55. Like, we're looking at guys here who, and I'm not in any way making an argument that even if a stat is better than Myles Garrett or whatever, that he is better than Myles Garrett, or this is a 1-for-1 swap, but I'm saying this isn't as much of a drop off as could have happened in alternate scenarios. This is a guy, Jared Verse, who was the 11th best, had the 11th best Sumer score at defensive end for us last year. So you're not actually getting a guy who is that much worse than Myles Garrett, and alternately has the potential to grow into someone who maybe down the road is as good as Myles Garrett. Now, I realize that's a lot to say because we know what Myles Garrett is, but I just love Jared Verse's game, and I love this swap for Cleveland. If you have to get rid of Myles Garrett, I can't think of a situation that you could have turned to elsewhere in the league where you said, hey, who can afford to give me this guy anyway in return? And where we have less drop off in this particular position. I think Jared Verse is going to be very good in Cleveland.
Yeah, I think, let's put it this way. There's very limited amount of players that are on the draft block that are going to be top 15 to top 10 in pressures every year, even though there is a discussion about his sacks and can he convert those at all, and is he winning the right way to get pressures. But regardless, I don't even think there's ever been a player that has been a top 10 or 15 edge rusher in terms of pressures available year two. So this is where that kind of dichotomy comes about. The Browns are looking at this in several ways. Number one, pressures are immensely sticky and they do have impact. Lindsay did an excellent job of breaking this down on the evaluation on our Edge Rushers show. And so if you want the core data details, be sure to subscribe to SumerSports and go check out that evaluation episode where Lindsay did an excellent job. But knowing that, the Browns are going to invest in players that get a lot of pressures. And so thus, it's a pretty good move from that perspective, because realistically, while predictively, you're definitely going to think Myles Garrett is going to have more pressures just because he's played for quite a while. The variance on the pressures per year is not going to be majorly that different moving forward. Then secondarily, what does it mean with regards to the drop off? Yeah, Myles Garrett's going to swing a line. Jared Verse probably won't, but you're not paying him at all. Like, you're paying him a rookie contract. And like core element to this is they have another year of evaluation before they even have to extend him. And so
he's 2 years into his rookie deal, which, since he was a first rounder, could be as long as 5 years because they could pick up his 5th-year option.
Exactly. So functionally, what is going on here is they are buying a year of a player who potentially could be a Pro Bowler for.
He already has been.
Yeah.
Two-time Pro Bowler. He's been in the league for 2 years, and he's a 2-time Pro Bowler outside linebacker. I mean, Pro Bowler is, we can have a separate conversation about whether that means anything, but.
Exactly. So the production drop-off, at least in terms of pressures, the sticky stat, is minimal. You're buying variance that potentially he could reach an all-pro level over a longer period of time, a younger player. And then you're also buying a cheaper evaluation period in a scenario where you do not have a quarterback.
Yep.
And you're thinking maybe Deshaun Watson is going to be your quarterback, and Deshaun Watson is very expensive. And so it's kind of a perfect storm of elements for this exact Browns team that makes sense that no one else, I think maybe the only other team who could potentially offer a scenario like this would be the Eagles and Jalen Carter. And that comes with a whole other kind of historical background, a player with off the field issues that you're bringing in and are going to have to pay. And so, and also you're dealing with the Eagles, who are not going to give that level of draft capital.
They're
in
also
any
busy
given
working
year.
out other trades currently.
Correct. And
Oh.
so it's a perfect storm trade for both of these teams because the elements that the Browns probably value as a team who has not been that good are all there. And the elements that the Rams probably value, which is this is the spot now. And if it breaks down, we still probably need to be able to compete given the assets that we have. It's a perfect storm for them as well.
Let's bring in Sean Syed now. This feels like a perfect time to bring him in to discuss his thoughts on this move for both teams. Let's start with the Browns and Jared Verse and how he fits in there and how this might look different. As far as like fans that turn on the TV in week 1, how will this look different having Jared Verse out there rather than Myles Garrett? What stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there is a step down from Myles Garrett, one of probably the best defensive player that I've ever gotten to see play football, to Jared Verse. And that's nothing to take away from Verse, but of course, you're going to feel a difference. To me, the big thing is going to be just the amount of double teams that Myles Garrett sees versus Jared Verse. Like, that is something that you can really point to from a schematic level where, of course, you have to be worried about where Verse is, but in offense has to spend their entire game plan around where is Myles Garrett? And what I do like that Garrett and Verse both share is they'll line up over the center. A few snaps a year where you get a highlight where Verse is just kind of bowling over the center, or Myles Garrett is doing his little crossover over that spot. But I do think Browns fans, you can be very happy about the return in terms of draft picks and things of that nature. But yeah, I think we should be fair here where you can absolutely look at pressure numbers. I think digging into our data, just looking at win rates, that certainly favors Garrett a little bit more. So even if like the on-field impact maybe is going to be are seen as similar from a data view, like there is still a big difference between whatever, like the number 1 edge rusher and then wherever you kind of have Jared Verse.
And on the flip side there, we're talking about double teams. It's the first thing that I thought of, putting Myles Garrett on this defensive line. Like, you can't double team him, can you? Or if you can, like, what does that even look like? Like these quarterbacks, they're going to have to face the Rams this year. I do not envy them at all.
Yeah. What an unfortunate situation. I was thinking just like, all right, if you're playing quarterback for the Cardinals, like this is what you have to deal with like 2 times a year. That is such a big problem. And you think about those double teams where, I mean, who feels comfortable one-on-one with Myles Garrett? Like Sam had mentioned the Eagles, like, okay, yeah, you can like kind of hope and pray for the best from the guys that you have there. But I think that it just takes so much stress off of different parts of your defense. If an offense has to have their tight end blocking, now you can only have 4 eligible pass catchers out. That makes everyone's life easier. You look at the Rams roster. Of course, they have they add in a bunch of defensive backs. They add in Garrett. That linebacker spot, maybe you can attack there. Tight ends often are attacking there. But hey, we need that guy to help kind of blocking Myles Garrett. And then it just opens up so much space for others, whether it's, hey, Garrett's now going to stunt across the formation. Someone else is going to come into the picture. There's so many downstream effects. Whether it's, hey, Trent McDuffie has to just like, cover for like a tick less. It's so positive. So I love it. And I'm just thinking, how many teams are kind of kicking themselves like, oh man, we kind of wished maybe we could have got in on this business.
Well, I think there's not a lot of other teams that could have gotten what the Browns wanted, and I think that's the core element here that I think people don't understand is that in the face of the league proper, like, are the Browns a middling organization? Yes. But in terms of the decision-making processes that are proven out over the last couple of years, like, you're not going to get over on them really in a way that, I don't want to say we saw with the Cowboys per se last year, because the real outlay of capital is pretty similar, to first and Kenny Clark for Parsons versus, Verse and several other picks, high level picks for Garrett. But like Verse is radically more valuable than Kenny Clark, like radically more. I'm talking like $10 to $20 million, if not maybe $30 million at cost than Kenny Clark right now. Like, there's a massive delta between those two. And so if we're going to look, Sean, I mean, like at the detailed on-field elements, there's not going to be the situation where you're just going to be able to line Verse up on the outside, like you said, and just know that double teams are going to be there and you're going to be able to scheme. But like from a new coaching perspective from the Browns, do you think they're pretty excited for what the versatility of Verse could look like?
I think so, because you look at Verse as a guy that, he can absolutely move over that center. Like, I don't think it was against the Colts, but I do remember last year, he can do that. And that is a really, really positive thing, because it just gives your defense overall more versatility. I'm glad you mentioned, like, who can compare to this. I mean, how often do we see he's going to be in his third year? Like, he is on a rookie contract. Like, that is so nice for the Browns to have that just team control. That absolutely makes him even more valuable outside of just being a really, really positive player. So I'm excited to see Verse. You are able to move him along the formation. I think, you can find him comfortable in space every now and then. So yeah, as I said, it is not controversial to say it's a little bit of a step down from Defensive Player of the Year, Myles Garrett over there. But you do have a young guy who I'm glad you guys mentioned as well. He can continue to grow, right? Nothing is saying, hey, Verse had his best season as a rookie and it just has to keep going downhill. Like, he can absolutely continue to improve. So I wonder how much of this is the Rams saying, all right, well, we are going to part with Verse. And the Eagles look at it and say, we think that Jalen Carter can actually be one of the ones. And maybe the Rams, they're going to have a different time horizon, of course. Like, they're very much going to be, hey, we need to knock this out right now. Like, while we still have Matt Stafford playing at this high of a level. So I think the on-field stuff is very, very fun. Then the narratives around are just, they're so fascinating for us to wake up to on June 1st.
I want to phrase the question this way, just to so we're making an argument here, and maybe this question doesn't need to be asked, but we're making an argument here that Jared Verse is great. He's already established that he's talented. He's young. He's inexpensive at this point. All of these different things. There's room for growth. Maybe he turns into this incredible player. In that situation, and understanding that Myles Garrett is generationally good, but he's also 30. Is there any argument or conversation to be had about whether or not this even was a good move for the Rams? Like, long term? Is it worth talking about? Like, if he's so good, why wouldn't they want to build around that?
I mean, Sam, first Lindsay coming at the people that are 30 years old. It's tough, it's tough to have.
We're talking about professional athletes, okay?
Yeah,
it's a different story.
It's
Alvin
so easy.
Kamara is
it's easy to look at it and say, oh, well, if the Rams win a Super Bowl, like, then no one else looks at it. Yeah, like, of course, we get that, right? Like, if you make that move and then you end up having that kind of result, I just, like, there is that difference in that quality of player. And I do think that makes sense. And, like, this is a haul. Like, this is a big return for the Browns to have. I may say, Sam, is this kind of a rare where both sides are like, okay, we're good at this. We can go ahead and ride forward.
Yeah. And I think, to your point, Lindsay, it's like, why couldn't we have just built around Myles Garrett? They've been built around Myles Garrett. They've had a top 5 defense the last several years.
No, not for Cleveland. I'm saying for the Rams. I'm saying for the Rams. I'm saying if I'm a Cleveland Browns fan and I'm like, so you're telling me Jared Verse is so good, ideally, if you could have one of the top defensive or edge rushers in the league, and he's also young and he's inexpensive and his ceiling could be Myles Garrett, then why wouldn't you want to retain that? Like,
his ceiling being Myles Garrett is that I think it might be a little bit bold.
You don't think that's even in the cards?
That's
possible?
I mean, I do think anything is possible, but, like, that is a 0.001% outcome. Like, this is more generational than generational, right? Like, it's not 1-2, it is 1A and, like, a gap, right? So I guess, obviously, I do think I have to say, like, yes, of course, in the, like, range of outcomes, but it would be surprising to me, certainly, if Jared Verse is able to get to that level.
Yeah, and that's where I was about to flip it, is like, then you go to the Rams' perspective of things. And what the Rams are looking for is to decrease variance. Like, they want to understand that their defense is going to be good no matter what, because it kind of fell off the rails a little bit down the stretch as the playoffs went along, particularly with the cornerback position, which they've already addressed. So, like, the idea that you're adding a 30-year-old who, like, again, injury and aging effects do come about, but you're adding a guy who has maintained this level for multiple years. And by all accounts, unless something radical happens, like a massive injury, we're going to be about as confident, like Sean said, 99.99% percentile, not necessarily 99% confident, but like the tippy top of percentile of how confident we could be. That is what they're adding to their team. And so, and it's probably like that this year. It's probably like that next year. I'd venture to say it's going to probably be like that the year after. And this is a position as well, whether it is smaller guys like Von Miller, who LA indeed invested in, or bigger guys who I think are more comparable to Myles Garrett, like Cameron Jordan. Cameron Jordan just had a 10.5 sack season playing inside. And Myles Garrett is a true 5-tech, an old school 5-tech. Can he play in the 9 and can he play in the 3 and all this other stuff? Yes, but he's an old school defensive end when it comes to the heart of what he is. And so he has all those abilities and all those kind of spaghetti octopus tentacles of how his career can turn out that still look really, really good for the Rams team, despite anything else going on around. And I think that's really the core of what this trade is that the Browns have not been successful in the win column. They need to increase variance while still trying to maintain the same level of performance. They did that. The Rams think they are a certified team. They need to decrease variance. They need to basically ensure that their team will be better in talent than everyone else. They did that. And moreover, they're in a situation where they don't really know. Their quarterback situation could get a little shaky. So who would you want to add? You'd want to add an edge rusher like this.
I think, Sam, there's a lot of good there. I'm glad you mentioned the kind of looking at the Rams defense last year and saying, all right, well, you do get to some points of the season on the season long, just, from the numbers, you feel quite positive about them. But yeah, I think we did all get the feeling of, man, we just need to have a little bit more from that unit overall. I do think Chris Shula's job just gets a lot easier. I do think he's pretty good at the job, and you're able to scheme up things like interceptions against Sam Darnold. You're able to do a lot of things like those 5-down kind of pressures. Like if you now give a guy who you think is pretty good at this, Myles Garrett, fantastic, right? That makes your life a lot easier. Not only, hey, can we win comfortably with 4, but I mentioned the downstream effects. I'm just such a believer in that, where it's every single position on that defense, their life is made easier. Everyone else on the defensive line, their life is made easier. The linebackers maybe don't have to guard a tight end because he's got to stay into double. Cornerbacks have to cover a little bit less. Safeties, if I'm a quarterback, I would certainly be looking at a little bit at Myles Garrett. Safeties are able to play with quarterbacks a little bit further. So I like this as just a hyper aggressive way to say, not that I think that the defensive performance was like smoke and mirrors last year by any means, but any kind of regression, we're just going to attack that and say, we're going to throw Myles Garrett at our problem and feel good about it.
Yeah. And not for nothing, Lindsay, what was the thing that we highlighted every single Seahawks game about what the Rams would do that could cause problems for the Seahawks? It is run dime.
Yeah.
You now have Myles Garrett.
It's so much easier to fit the run when you have Myles Garrett there. Of course, you're really able to make people orbit around him.
Yeah, I mean, I like Omar Speights as a player, but as we were watching the conference championship game, we were watching Sumer Live, which you can go look at right now on SumerSports.com. The big circle and the big tweets that we were sending out is, dang, they're running a lot of nickel and a lot of base against a team that they have not done this against. Why are they doing that? Are they not confident in their defense anymore? They're confident in their defense now. I can tell you that.
You guys. By the way, I feel like I need to clarify that I was asking anticipated, questions that other people might ask, not necessarily that I'm calling into question why the Rams made this move, because all of the things that you just described make me giddy. It's insane how fun it's going to be to watch this Rams team this year. And I love the concept of okay, Seahawks win, Rams make a move. It's all kind of I see your this and I raise you a this, and just watching to see how the Seahawks will respond to this, and other teams obviously too. But it's just so fun to watch teams be at their best making moves like this. That kind of raise
would you guys have preferred if they had AJ Brown instead of Myles Garrett? They AJ Brown plus you able to keep first, just because looking at the Rams roster overall, right? The receiver position, a lot is, I think, banking on Devontae Adams able to stay healthy. Of course, everyone has talked ad nauseum about, hey, 13 personnel. Yes, but on third down, this is a 11 personnel against nickel league. That's how it's been. That's how it's likely going to continue to be. So I guess I'm trying to think hey, would you have preferred to have the receiver overall? I guess I don't have an answer yet. So I'm curious if you guys have any thoughts on that.
I don't think AJ Brown would move a spread. I don't think they'd be a better, I mean, maybe a tick better.
So you think Garrett does move the spread on this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you're dealing with a Hall of Famer playing at a Hall of Fame status versus a Pro Bowler.
With so much talent around him.
Yeah.
It's we've already seen him be like mind-blowingly good, and now you're putting him on a line and a defense with McDuffie back there. You're just like, what do you do? What do you do? How do you handle this as an offensive coordinator? Like, it's bonkers how game-changing I think that this is. But to that point, I also think there's an element of like, if you put AJ Brown in that wide receiver room, then how does that split targets, between assuming you still have Devontae Adams and obviously you still have Puka? Like, what does that do for just the structure of like where the ball needs to go, when it needs to go? There's no doubt AJ Brown is insanely talented, but it might change things in ways that I don't necessarily want changed.
All right, I've been convinced. I'll give Garrett as my official answer on this one too. Then I think that those are really good points. I guess the hope I'm trying to think, like, can you say when you look at the Rams, okay, well, we're gonna outscore him. If anything, it's like, oh, maybe we can. Like, I'm just so lucky we get to see Mike McDonald against this defense or this offense twice, because I wonder, like, is the only way to beat them like kind of like beating them on offense as opposed to trying to get into like some kind of shootout there, because it's stressing me out looking at this roster and then thinking about, all right, well, what are the other teams in the NFC going to do?
Yeah, I think here's what I'll say is I think that the way that if we sat down with Les Snead and Sean McVay and we said, how does next year just go down the chute? Like, how does it just end up being terrible? Option one would be Matthew Stafford going down. I don't know if AJ Brown helps that. Like, if Matthew Stafford goes down and you have AJ Brown on your team, are you massively going to be helped as an offense?
That's a great
Probably
point.
not.
That's a fair point. And I'm glad you mentioned that as number one. Ty Simpson there, if that happens.
Yeah, but even so, like Ty Simpson there, like you make the draft pick and it's a little wonky, but like even then, if it goes to Ty Simpson, I don't even know if AJ Brown would particularly help. Like, sure, it'd be great to have him, but in terms of the actual outcome of the team winning games, you're moving from an expected 30th in EPA per play with Ty Simpson to an expected 28th, to where with the defense, we saw the ceiling and the floor last year. We saw them be able to create turnovers. We saw them be able to trot out small personnels. We saw them be able to get pressure consistently. And then we also saw the cornerbacks get absolutely toasted basically the majority of the late part of the period. And we also, not for nothing, saw Jared Verse not be able to generate pressure at quite the level that we saw him prior. And that was really the reason they were losing games, offensive, or not losing games, but in these tight games, offensive, defensive wise. Now, like, as a little joke, can Myles Garrett return punts? Can he kick field goals? That would certainly help them win games as well, as compared to what we saw last year. But all that saying, that's why I say this is a true floor raiser, not a like, they don't care. I think their ceiling is already sky high. They care about the floor.
Call on me.
Lindsay.
You might have said this already, Sam. But with regards to Ty Simpson, and sorry, my brain's going in like 8 different directions. So if you have said this, then just shut me up and say I already said that. Maybe this to the point of Asa, who said that this makes the Ty Simpson pick even weirder. Maybe this literally explains the Ty Simpson pick. Because if you know that this is a possibility this offseason, and we've all kind of seen the Cleveland Browns making moves that seemingly set the table. They wanted to trade the trade rules so that you could trade even more picks, right? Which we all said at the time, this feels like
I
signal that they want a bunch of picks for Myles.
That's an awesome pull.
They redid his contract in March, which also seemed to like, okay, so now we're not on the table for picking it up until September rather than March. And so this changes our maneuverability for Cleveland. They all feel like, especially in retrospect, signal that they were willing to trade him. So now if you're the Rams and you think, let's go fucking get him. Now you go, how do we ensure we still have a quarterback to take over for Matthew Stafford and we get Myles Garrett? We have to get that quarterback now, because we're going to trade away our one for next year, maybe even the one for the year after that. We don't have picks to go get that quarterback. So we have to get Ty Simpson right now so that we can go get Myles Garrett in a couple of months.
And I'm going to regret saying this.
Oh, I love it.
Starting with that, Sam, is
Myles Garrett is like one of maybe 4 to 6 players in history, I think, that may have at age 30 a higher spread value than a rookie quarterback. Like, he's maybe 1 to 5 of those players.
Sam, I mean that's a deep dive on the positional value.
I'm just saying,
we've fought a lot of good chats about this recently.
If there's a player to take the thought process that Lindsay just outlaid, like he's the one. Like there's no other. It's like him and like maybe Reggie White. That's maybe it. Like I'm trying to Jerry Rice, perhaps Randy Moss. Like it's maybe those 4 players, and that's it.
I'm something you had talked about before, just saying Garrett, age 30, like, because he's winning in all sorts of ways, but I'm trying to think just how his game will age. Sam, you had mentioned how, like, are you a heavy 5? Are you a guy that you bump to a 3 later on, because he has so much strength. So he can win with speed. He can win with strength. He can run through a guy. I don't want to look at this and from the Rams even and say, oh, well, this is like in 2 years, like he's just going to be toast. Like I do think there's a world where Garrett's game just ages quite nicely, and wherever Jared Verse kind of lands, you still feel quite good about kind of the long-term trajectory on this one. I worry sometimes though, like, because when I'm like intellectualizing this, I'm like, okay, yeah, you should feel great if you're the Browns. Like you get all of this value, and then like we had mentioned, hey, know what? Like you're gonna have to figure the quarterback position out eventually. Like how long, I guess, can you hold on to the beautiful like green on your trade value chart until eventually it's just like, oh man, it's a tough spot to be in.
Myles Garrett in a Rams uniform, like even just the logo
look great
at the bottom of the screen is just, you guys, so fun. And maybe we'll be back tomorrow breaking down a different trade. I don't know. Lots of talk in the last few days with June 1st now upon us, and we can make these moves. Sean, you're the best. One quick note to say real quick before we go. Stopsky looked into, because I know that this is also a part of the question, like why June 1? Why now? Like what are the financials, right? Like what is Cleveland caught holding the bag? Because there is a dead cap number. It's smaller than it would have been yesterday. Stopsky, tell us what you know about the financials to this move.
Yeah, so the dead cap before June 1 would have been $41 million. The dead cap is still $41 million, just now it's 15.5 this year and 25.5 next year. And if they were to take on the dead cap prior to June 1, they would have actually taken on $17 million of additional cap. And they only have $18 million of cap space at this moment. So that's not enough room to really wiggle with, to add anybody like a Jared Verse. Like, so this had to happen post June 1. That's why, that's why it happened today and not yesterday.
Yeah.
And sorry, go ahead.
For what it's worth, Lindsay, like the Browns are one of the most kind of creative and analytical when it comes to cap space. And so I do imagine, as you kind of mentioned, this was planned out well in advance, in particular how they wanted to handle it, and in particular what assets that they were willing to take back.
What does this mean for the Rams from a financial standpoint? They had earlier when I checked, and I don't think it had updated, $25 million worth of cap space prior to the move.
Yeah. So, I mean, like as an old Saints fan, you start doing a couple things, which is like, what does this mean for Puka, for example? Like, what does that mean for an extension? You're probably, I don't think he has been extended yet. JSN has, but I don't think Puka has, right? Is that correct?
I feel like I should know that, and I don't off the top of my head.
Yeah,
finding that information for you.
Yeah. So either way, you start looking at the best players you have, and you start saying, okay, we're going to put this in a signing bonus or an option bonus, and this is going to start to get pushed to 5 years, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it probably looks like Puka having a very, very small cap number this year related to a signing bonus heavy deal. Then you look at Byron Young. Are you getting ready to extend him? Do you want to keep him? Then you start pushing that stuff down the road, et cetera, in order to make room for it. But I mean, the upside and the downside of drafting well is like all these dudes are kind of on rookie contracts. Like you can't, they're small, but like really the only people who I think are highly paid on this team is like Matthew Stafford, and even like Kyron Williams is on a higher running back salary, but that's not going to really help you out. That's going to be like $5 million maximum. So there is going to have to be some flexibility, but as we know, like teams can have players on their team. The issue is not now. The issue is 3 years. And that's happened to the Rams before, and they were able to get out of it by having perhaps one of the best drafts of all time, or the best 2-year draft runs of all time. And that's really the only way you're going to dig yourself out of it. So they clearly believe in their draft process, and that's what's going to have to happen here, particularly as Myles Garrett hits age 33 or 34.
He's going to need like $40 million.
Yeah, he's making he's in the top of the market of a non quarterback. Pretty solid. He's making quarterback money for all intents and purposes.
Oh no, I'm talking about Puka. Puka's going to need 40.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, like maybe they'll be able to get him down because of the injury and off the field stuff, but it's going to be.
They're not getting it.
It's not going to be a penny less than JSN probably, right? Or I mean, like the Jamar Chase look. Like there's a bunch of questions about that.
This is gonna be fascinating.
Yeah. So all that to say, you're going to be in a position where you're going to have 3 of the highest paid players at their position. McDuffie. Well, yeah. I mean, like Kyron. We're not going to count Kyron. You're going to have McDuffie. You're going to have Garrett, and you're going to have Puka. And that's not including Byron Young, who was a Pro Bowler last year.
And also was gonna need
that's not including any offensive lineman, not one. And it starts getting a little vary in the next 2 to 3 years, but we've seen teams do it before.
All right, we're going to save the rest of that conversation for another day. Thank you so much for being with us here on the SumerSports Show. Big day in the NFL world on June 1st. How about that? Going live with breaking news. Myles Garrett is a Los Angeles Ram. And just as importantly, the Cleveland Browns have draft capital and also an adequate replacement for Myles Garrett to go get a quarterback. That's one last thing I think that is worth just sort of mentioning here is tracking the first round for next year. Jets have 3 first-round picks. Browns have 2. We've got an arms race going in order to secure an arm for those 2 historically underperforming franchises. So we'll see who can go get their guy. Thank you so much for being with us. For Sam Bruchhaus and Matt Stopsky and Sean Syed, I'm Lindsay Rhodes. We'll see you again soon.